Coming up on Nebraska Stories, our favorite handmade Nebraska originals. Making paint move with the stroke of a brush. Homemade salsa delivered by bike. The perfect saddle from a second-generation maker. Building a sci-fi film studio for a feline star. And the craft behind making hickory golf clubs.
I'm a painter and an animator. I have a painting. I have an image that I've painted. I take a picture of it. I change it a little bit. I take another picture. I do that several thousand times over. Over the course of a few months, and I have an animation in the end. Immediately questions always follow. What do they look like? What are the stories about? Or are they stories? The Ancient Mariners, a paintimation that I've made, starts off with a sea turtle going by in the frame. Then that gets sort of taken out of frame by a hand and brought on a whole ship. I picked up the camera mainly because my brother was playing with the camera. He was making home movies, so I joined in and started helping him make these little mini productions, and then I started making my own. Really, I was making art to a certain extent then, and making art for me is really about creating worlds and stories, and it's a way of playing. I didn't actually start animating again until after graduate school. So stop motion came into play as a way to document steps, and it was by accident. This is a way for me to tell a story, but also to examine the process of painting. My wife Anne, we work together to create animations. She's using a lot of small toys and antique toys. She places these in relationship to one another, creates content that way. We both want there to be a high standard, and we really want the work to be good. It frees me in a way from having to generate the immediate first frame, and then I can work off of that first frame that she's created. It's hard to paint over the painting sometimes, and I have to make sure that that frame isn't too precious. But if I'm keeping in mind what my goal is and how the story is going to evolve or how the sequence is going to evolve, it makes it just a little bit easier. That challenge keeps me going, makes me want to make more animations. Especially if I hit play, the painting becomes alive and it's moving. And it's really about that, making paint move.
Salsa is just something that I enjoy eating with everything. And it's usually the simplest thing people come up with. It's basically all vegetables that can go into anything, just come out of one jar.
For Johnny Davis, salsa is a staple in every meal. But it took a suggestion from a friend for him to take his love of salsa and make it a business.
I didn't even think it as a business venture at the time. Before I could make it and sell it without having a processing permit or an actual certified kitchen, because I was making a lot of small batches, so I was at 8 to 12 a week, and now I'm close to almost 100 jars a week.
An increase in demand also means more hours in the kitchen, but finding the extra time can be difficult.
The construction job takes 7 to 8 hours, and then just finding time to do another 6 hours of salsa can make things a little hectic. But I think I've worked that out as for times when I get in the kitchen and times that I can actually do the work. I think the texture and the flavor is what actually keeps people coming back. I just get rid of all the seeds. Right now, I've got a local grower because the stores are inconsistent with quality and quantity. So it's going to be more of a consistent flavor and spice because the pepper's going to be from one ground, one area.
The flavor of it, it just tastes more flavor and it's more potent and there's a more depth to it. His salsa is always good and fresh and tastes like he literally made it that morning and brought it over, because he probably did.
Johnny uses fresh produce, custom labels, and mason jars to make Johnny's salsa stand out. He does one more thing that's unique to his salsa. He delivers it. It's not just that he delivers, but how he delivers it.
Right now it's a single speed freewheel. It was easy when it was just me and my bag and the bicycle. But then when the deliveries moved up, I had to get a trailer to account for the increase.
Even with the additional orders, Johnny still wants to deliver it by bike. But that decision stems from a past mistake.
A DUI, actually a double DUI. I got the first one, and I started riding bike just because I was tired of asking for rides or walking. I thought I learned, but I didn't learn, and so I got a second one, and then I was like, nope, I'm completely done with that.
Even on his bike, traffic can still be a problem when out on deliveries.
Drivers, car drivers, some are very bicycle alert, and others just don't care. They'll yell at you for no specific reason. I wear parts down faster. My pedals burn out, the chains burn out, the brakes burn out. Other minor issues are just flat tires, cables, and just other little things that just happen, but that's just because you're pulling weight behind it. Still, the made by hand, the people like because it's fresh. But I think the most enthusiasm people get is actually being delivered by bicycle.
He loves riding his bike, so for him to have the opportunity to do two things that he loves at one time is fantastic.
It'll always be delivered by bicycle, either via me or friends.
It's just kind of fun to like see some guy bring a bunch of salsa over with his bike.
Hey, hi. Hey.
How we doing? There's your salsa.
Oh, thanks.
It's a neat, unique thing to have in Lincoln.
All I wanted to do is be a cowboy. Part of it by making saddles. My folks started this business in 1942 here in Kearney, and I was born in 47, and they kept me in a saddle box when I was a baby. So I grew up in the shop. When I was 12 years old, I built my first saddle with the help of my dad. I tried to count up and keep track of what my dad and I have made up to date, as close as I can come. With him and I combined, we've made right at 3,000. And I've probably made at least 1,800 of those. But as far as the tooling, he would only use one flour all the time, and Mom did everything different every project she worked on, and that's what I do. Actually, my mom was way better than my dad, and she's the one that taught me how to do that. The idea of tooling like a saddle is it'll last longer because the leather is compressed, and it will last longer than a plain saddle will. If you're going to be on a horse a lot, say if you want to be a cowboy, you need a saddle, and preferably one that's not going to hurt your horse's back and not going to hurt you. And my dad pretty well taught me that. He said, if you're not happy with the job, don't show it to the customer. Throw it under the bench and start over. My wife is a great quality control person. She really looks at every stitch and makes sure, because she always says, we're professionals. We can't turn out stuff that looks half done.
We have sent saddles to Canada, Germany, Switzerland, Brazil, Japan, England. We were surprised when we first started getting orders from foreign countries. People are absolutely in love with anything to do Western in the United States. With an actual saddle, I do all of the finish work. That means rubbing down the edges, because after he cuts them, they're kind of rough, and I rub them down and make them nice and smooth. She is probably one of the best finish people in the business. I've never seen anybody match her. So she's a lot of help. I make them shiny and pretty. Maybe that's the way that I should say it. There's times at night I'll wake up and get to thinking about something. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll come out here and at least draw it out so I don't forget it. Yes, he is an artist, even if he is humble about it. He's an artist in other mediums if he had time to pursue it. They're the people that go out in the morning when it's still dark, take a halter with them or a catch rope and catch their horse that's snorting at them and saddle them up and take off just as the sun's coming up. Those are celebrities to me. I like to build stuff for working cowboys.
What drew me to filmmaking was when Star Trek came out and Lost in Space. They were such fantastic TV series about space.
Bill Hedges loves sci-fi movies, so much that he's built his own spaceship set in his basement.
I try to keep the upstairs fairly normal looking. I figured downstairs I can, go wild, and that's what I did. I bought this book called The Making of Star Trek, and it detailed all of how, everything about how Star Trek was made, all the behind-the-scenes stuff. It had blueprints in there, how the stages were designed. So I can switch from day to night in here.
Hedges grew up on a farm outside Lyons. As a kid, he came to town for movies at the local theater.
Back in the 60s, the theater was a popular place for people to hang out, especially in a small town. That was the place to go on, Saturday nights, because that was before there was television. People would get their news from newsreels. I got a job here as a projectionist at the theater when I was 13, and I worked here, through high school, which was kind of a fun job to have. My favorite film was The Absent-Minded Professor. For graduation, my folks gave me a Kodak Super 8 movie camera, and I used that to make some little shorts, a lot of stop frame animation movies, and that was the start of my amateur filmmaking career. My folks gave me this.
After high school, Hedges served in the Navy and worked in the Fremont Post Office. He kept making home movies. But in 1985, the Lyons Theater closed.
I hated to see it disappear because it was such a source of entertainment for me, and being as I worked there too.
So Hedges bought as much of it as he could and built a home theater in his basement as an homage.
I had a lot of beach movies, spy movies back then, westerns, comedies. Well, this is some of the things I had saved from the Lyons Theater. So I used to go through these very same doors.
In 2014, the old Lyons Theater building came up for sale. He bought it. In the last couple years, Hedges has turned the old theater from a place designed to show movies into a place to make them.
Nebraska, it's just all cornfields and rolling hills, so I had to make my own alien planet here. It's an incredible playground for an amateur filmmaker to have the facilities to film anything here. I can have just to have the space to actually build sets and miniatures is something I could never do at home. This is my stage 2, and I built a ancient ruins set in here.
He's built sets for films he plans to make, including a new series co-starring his cat.
Basically about me and my cat and adventures in space, meeting other aliens, and it's going to be kind of a parody, not a serious sci-fi, but I have about 12 episodes written so far, so. To match between the different scenes, this is a miniature of me and my cat in there, which also matches the interior of that spaceship and also the interior of my set in my basement. Still got to add the plexiglass to the window, though.
He builds props out of all kinds of things, many of them scavenged.
My series is going to have a lot of parodies in here, and one of them is from The Good and the Bad and the Ugly.
But it's not all sci-fi sets.
This is the original lobby, and I tried
He's restored part of the building to how it used to be, even reinstalling the original film projectors upstairs. This building lets Hedges tie past to present, making movies in the very space that cultivated his love of the art.
Other people in town seem to appreciate it too, because I get people asking for tours of it once in a while, which is fun to talk to them too, because they just share their memories of coming here and they point out things that they remember. So it's nice to preserve a little bit of that.
And he's never lost his childhood love of movie making. In 2015, he created a film about the history of Lyons. Now, he's working on training his cat for his next project.
Okay, hop down. Okay, high five. High five me, he'll jump up on my shoulder, so I'm trying to train him to come and, stop, hit his mark. If you want to get a lot of views on YouTube, all you have to do is put a cat on the internet and you're automatically guaranteed an audience there. cats in space. I think that's a winning combination.
Dashing in their +4s and Newsboy caps, the big hitters are on the links today. It's Happy Hollow versus Champions Run in a highly anticipated club match. There's Dave Brown, the Dapper Doctor, skippered the winning Hickory International Cup team for the US of A. Brown and friends hope their spoons, mashies, and niblicks carry them to victory. The Whippaligutty down the fairway, and off they go.
In motorized golf carts in suburban Omaha, past meets present in the world of Hickory golf.
Well, Hickory golf kind of brings us back to our roots of the way the golf was back in the 1800s, early 1900s.
Brown's an orthopedic surgeon and avid golfer who discovered this different way of playing the sport a few years ago and was quickly hooked.
Part of the fascination is just the idea of golf history and what the previous great players were: Bob Jones, Walter Hagen, Harry Vardon. So many of us started out as golf collectors. We'd collect clubs or we'd collect old golf balls. And then one thing led to another, and pretty soon we're trying to play these sticks.
My favorite club, the one I will not give up, I have a Benny.
Oh yeah, but the Benny has like a little different notch out of the head. Those are neat.
Some of the clubs they talk about are a century old, with names like Mashie and Niblick. Today, they're being used in a small, low-key Hickory golf competition between teams from 2 Omaha courses. Most dressed for the event in the style of Hickory-era golfers.
They're fun to wear. You know, it's funny, sometimes when you dress up, you play better.
The 8 players also share similar stories of passionate golfers looking to the past for a new challenge. Hap Pockrass once wore a college golf uniform.
Golf just kind of got a little stale for me here the last few years, and I was discouraged because I wasn't able to compete like I wanted to. I was introduced to Hickory golf, and at first I turned my nose to it like most until I finally tried it, and I was hooked pretty much immediately.
Probably just the history of the game, how good it feels to hit a Hickory shot, playing with your buddies, sharing clubs, trading clubs, finding the clubs.
Hickory players are a small fraction of the 25 million who play the sport in the United States. But while the overall number is said to be declining, those around Hickory golf say interest in their version is growing.
10 years ago, nobody was playing Hickory, and now we'll have 10 or 12 guys. And that's pretty common in many of the private clubs around town where guys, typically more mature guys like myself, that'll play these old sticks just for a different method of golf play.
41.8 or thereabouts.
And that interest has helped spur a little growth industry in Omaha.
Well, I am heating up the gutta percha material.
Joe Manley retired from teaching music. Now he makes balls for McIntyre Golf. Dave Brown started the small company, which makes golf balls like those that were played in the Hickory era. In this case, the pre-1905 Gutty. The recipe starts with cooking the tree-based raw material in 180-degree water.
So there are people who collect them, there's people who play with them, and there are people who play with modern clubs that just think it's cool to have a mesh pattern ball rather than just a boring old modern ball.
And for another basically one-person operation, Ray Schuneman sold his 20-year business, learned blacksmithing, and started making putters by hand.
No one has done this, as far as I'm aware, for probably 85 years. And I read a couple books on it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try this. I'm going to see if I can do it.
It starts with a chunk of steel in a 2,300-degree forge, then a couple thousand wax with a heavy hammer.
to a craftsman. It's really rewarding work. I mean, it's physical work, but it's mentally rewarding, and voila, you have something at the end. You take a bar of steel and you turn it into something like this. This is just the beginning of a golf club.
Playing with the old equipment can be challenging.
You don't make a good swing, and the bad shots are a lot worse.
Magnified 100 times.
Yep.
So you just have to accept it and move on and forget about it.
These players also use modern clubs at times. The difference, they say, is just a few strokes and some distance, especially off the tee.
But if you get their shafts right, the wooden shafts right, you can swing them just like a regular swing. I do anyway.
In a modern era plentiful with swing experts and high-tech analysis, Pokras says Hickory golf is more about keeping things simple.
With the Hickory golf and the style of play that you partake with Hickory golf, the shafts are built in a way that it's really very much feel. And what I mean by that is closing your eyes and swinging a club and just getting a sense of where the club is at all times, and that feel there is what's most important.
It's also about how they feel when using century-old equipment and clothing.
To be able to bring these old clubs and this old equipment into play, it absolutely draws you the connection. It draws that connection to where the game began and why we're here enjoying it today.
I think it's because it connects people to the history, to the long history. There's not many sports, archery and horse riding and so forth, that have a 500-600 year history. So to be able to connect to that as a participant of any activity or sport, I think is pretty special.
It feels a lot different. It's great, actually. I come out here, and if a bad Hickory day is still a really, really good golf day. And you can always blame this old golf club for the bad shot.
And a good walk unspoiled by taking a few steps back in time.
To see more Nebraska stories, go to our website and like us on Facebook. Nebraska Stories is funded by the Margaret and Martha Thomas Foundation. Sustained funding for arts coverage on Nebraska Stories is provided by the H. Lee and Carol Gendler Charitable Fund.